Hi, this is Scott Grant. You're listening to the Scott Grant Show on 103.9 WSOS FM, and we are broadcasting from beautiful downtown Ponte Vedra Beach. I'm here with Demery Mason, my friend Dems. Hi, Dems.
Hi, Scott.
Great to have you back for another segment. In the break, we were talking about Pedro Menéndez, and it turns out I'm going to give a Pedro Menéndez speech tomorrow night. And I've been thinking about the story because it's pretty bloody.
It is. It's very bloody.
And so, almost Quentin Tarantino-esque. I mean, part of the story is, not everybody, Pedro Menéndez survives, but everybody who's not Spanish dies.
There's two colonies. There's the Spanish colony at St. Augustine, and then there's the French fort or colony up here in Jacksonville. At that time, it's on the St. Johns River. They called it the River May. And Fort Caroline, which is currently part of our national park system. That's actually kind of interesting. The Castillo de San Marco and Fort Caroline are both national park properties.
Oh, that is interesting. Yeah, because Fort Mose is a state park, and I've never done anything at Caroline, but I've done speeches at the Castillo de San Marcos, and had a good time. I did the submarine, the 1942 submarine attack speech there. They called it the River May. They come here in 1564, and they set up a colony with René de Laudonnière, and they eventually Jean Ribault shows up,
right?
And then Menéndez, and Menéndez is sent, I think, with the orders to remove the French. I mean, and to kill him, I think.
Right. He was supposed to destroy Fort Caroline, and I may. It's been a little while since I've read on this, so I'm sorry if I maybe get anything backwards here. But the French start heading to the Castillo, and the Spanish start heading to Fort Caroline, and they kind of miss each other. I think in like a rainstorm or something.
Well, the French are at sea.
The French are at sea, right?
And the Spanish march overland 2 days from St. Augustine to Fort Caroline. And interestingly, both sides kind of leave their home base, their fort, unprotected. A giant storm comes. And because of that storm coming roughly coinciding with the Feast of St. Matthew, that storm is the first named hurricane to hit the state of Florida. And they call it St. Matthew's or San Mateo. They end up renaming Fort Caroline San Mateo, and the River May is the River San Mateo until it gets changed to the St. John's later. Mm-hmm. But after that big, huge storm, the storm wrecks the French fleet. They end up...
they're shipwrecked.
Yeah, in Daytona and Cape Canaveral in two groups.
Right. And then they end up surrendering to the Spanish. And that's when Menéndez, like you said, in a very Quentin Tarantino-esque way, as I recall, they were on different sides of a river, or it's Matanzas Inlet, right?
Right, exactly, Matanzas Inlet.
Right, and then the Spanish say, okay, you're surrendering, we're going to take you over by in like a rowboat or something, and they're taking a few guys at a time over, and then when they get them out of sight, they slit the throat of the French prisoners, and they end up murdering. And the French had surrendered at this point; they were prisoners. I want to say it was 200.
I think it was closer to 3 actually,
okay.
And it's 2 groups.
Right.
Both groups are like 120, 150 men, and a few survive. Mm-hmm. Not many, but a few do survive. A few are spared. I believe that they say they're Catholics, and they're spared for saying they're Catholics.
The French settlement here in Jacksonville was a Huguenot. It was a French Protestant group that had come here. That's actually where Huguenot Beach or Huguenot Park gets its name. Or when I did a semester at Cambridge, as my history professor at Cambridge would say, Huguenot. She hated that the Americans called them Huguenots, Huguenots. But that would make sense for some who were Catholic, because this would have been during the height of the Protestant Reformation and the wars of religion, where Catholic and Protestant violence back in Europe would have been very, very intense.
Well, it is, and it's going to get worse. In 1571 is the Bartholomew Day Massacre in Paris. So it's like 6 years later, and I think 3,000 to 6,000 people are killed in that. So this is just hundreds. Philip II had told Menéndez to kill these guys, I think. And when Menéndez reports back to Philip II, who's the king of Spain at this time, that he slit their throats because they were Luteranos or Lutherans.
Right. And just for anyone out there listening, to kind of bring this full circle. Philip II, we remember who his wife was supposed to be.
Is this Mary?
Mary, the daughter of Henry VIII.
Right.
So if you've watched The Tudors, you may remember Mary and Henry VIII. Philip II was supposed to be her husband. It ended up not working out very well.
Well, the England and Spain fight a lot, and again, partially over religion. England has become Protestant, and Spain remains staunchly Catholic. Philip II creates 3 inquisitions in the New World. So, he was pretty serious.
Yeah.
He did not want...
The French at Fort Caroline would agree with you at that.
Yeah, no, and a lot gets talked about as to why and how this happens, and it was controversial even in its day.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the stories that I kind of always like is the Spanish bishop responding to some of the criticism of Menéndez for killing these guys in cold blood. Suggests that Menéndez was something of a humanitarian.
Really?
Because he had only slit their throats when legally he could have burned them alive.
And lawyers get a bad reputation.
All right, well, thanks. That was fun. I love Pedro Menéndez. Again, this is 103.9 FM WSOS broadcasting out of St. Augustine.
All right, thank you.